I know the twitch and the this and he's mad and whatever, but Boston for a long time when Danny Ainge was running things, it was Danny Ainge would trade his mother, right? That was that you give Danny Ainge enough, he would trade his mother. And the bottom line was, hey, everybody is dealable here if we think the team is going to be better. And that is the ethos. And if that is the ethos around the team, nobody can be, well, I should not be tradable. I should not be that in that category. And I think if you are smart enough as a front office, and I don't know if Brad Stevens has that Danny Ainge sort of reputation inside the team, I think you can be like, yeah, grow up. Don't be a baby. This is the business. We're paying you $300 million plus.
And that right there is really the crux, because Brad Stevens already proved when he coached that team back in 2017 with the personalities of Kyrie Irving, Terry Rozier, Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown coming off the bench, the politics of Gordon Hayward and his injury. He couldn't manage any of that. So are we really left to believe that some of that animosity Jaylen Brown has ever since he entered the Celtics building, that it's been managed up to this point? I don't know.
Come play with Jayson Tatum, who you like. We'll make other, arrangements around the edges. I don't buy that the relationship is soured too much. You have to deal him for less than you could otherwise get for him. Do you?
Well, let me start with, I don't think that the Celtics should have gone all in for Giannis. I don't think they should have gutted the team because this is not 2022.
Yeah.
Giannis is right now damaged goods. He has had, as we mentioned, multiple years of these kind of soft tissue injuries, calf injuries that are enormous red flags for a player of his size and the way that he plays. And he's also not a player that has shown that he's evolving as he's getting older. This is the second part of it. Like, is the relationship irrevocably damaged? I do think it's more damaged than you think. I think
I buy it. You would know.
Now, as you hear it right there, Rachel Nichols says, hey, as you would know, because Chris Mannix does have inside information for the Celtics. I believe he used to be a beat writer for them. But right here, he's going to express some of the sentiments that he's been told that's coming out of that building.
Every year it's like death taxes at a Jaylen Brown trade rumor in Boston. It was Kawhi Leonard in 2018. It was Anthony Davis in 19 and 20. It was Kevin Durant in 2022. But this to me feels different. In the early years, Jaylen Brown was just like this young kid that had proven nothing. In 2022, he had proven something. And I reported at the time that he was pretty pissed off at those trade talks. He was, I don't want to overcharacterize his emotions, but he was upset that after helping lead the team to the finals and coming 2 wins away from winning a championship, he's being dangled for a player that's older than him that hadn't accomplished, what he had as recently as he did in Kevin Durant. This is like that on steroids, right? Like, this is Jaylen Brown coming off an all NBA season, coming off a year where he finished 6th in MVP voting, coming off a year where he did lead this team to 56 wins. I mean, 56 wins for the Celtics this year. We focus on the ending, but 56 wins was remarkable. What they did this year was incredible. I think after all that, to again, not only hear his name in trade rumors, but to see his name out there as one of the finalists, as seeing it firmly in print that this was close to happening, I think that caused some pretty significant damage to this relationship. And look, Brad Stevens, I was up late last night watching his press conference after the draft. There were multiple times Brad Stevens could have put the kibosh on, Jaylen Brown isn't going anywhere. Could have put some punctuation on it. He did everything he possibly could to not be definitive on that. He said Jaylen Brown is incredibly valuable, but I can't predict the future. He said Jaylen Brown is part of who we are, but he said you never know what can happen. Like, he was purposefully vague with Jaylen Brown. So that tells me this was not just about acquiring Giannis or just about a Giannis Antetokounmpo trade, which it was about in 2022. In 2022, It was about acquiring Kevin Durant.
Yep.
This time around, they missed out on Giannis. There's a decent chance they turn around in the next few days and weeks and do a deal for somebody else. So I do think the damage is much more significant now than it was years ago.
Now, a follow-up question the media could ask Brad Stevens after making those statements is if Jayson Tatum is also on that list, because it's not a guarantee that he comes back off of that injury looking the same.
But he is, if not one of the smartest players in the league. And this is a situation where the Celtics weren't saying Giannis is better than Jaylen Brown. They were saying Giannis fits the needs we have on this team better than Jaylen Brown does. You're having elite player and elite player because Giannis, yes, he obviously has more of a track record. Jaylen being sixth in MVP voting is no comparison to Giannis on that score. But the need for Giannis, the need for somebody who can pair with Jayson Tatum in that way, who can be that big. I just think that Jaylen understands, even if maybe the hurt takes over, and maybe that's the more important thing, that they were training. It wasn't them saying, Jaylen Brown, you're not good enough, because that idea of like, well, what else do you want me to do for you? I don't think it was a case of, well, you didn't do enough. I just don't think that was what Boston was thinking here. I think they were thinking clearly that playoff series exposed. It was more than just Jayson Tatum, was hurt by the end of it. Clearly, they need to change some big things about their team, which, by the way, they knew they were going to have to do. They didn't expect to be in this situation to begin with, so they knew this was going to be a retool.
But also, Jaylen Brown might have been thinking that the Giannis and Jayson Tatum pairing doesn't even make any sense because low-key Giannis loves to operate with the ball in his hands. And we've seen that clash play out with him and Damian Lillard in that short stint up in Milwaukee. Again, the optics still doesn't look right. You're about to gut half your team just for a player in Giannis who might not necessarily make a nice 1-2 punch with Tatum.
I don't know, man. I think that it would be a mistake for the Celtics to make a deal for someone who I put fifth on my MVP ballot for less than he's worth because of bad feelings. I just think you got to work those out. Get in a room. I don't know if Boston has a sports psychologist. Get in a room with Brad and the sports psychologist and Jaylen and talk it out, man. Address it head on. But they could still deal him. I absolutely believe they could, and they might want to or have to, again, to fill a need on their team. But I just don't think, quote, bad feelings should be the reason they give away who I think is one of the most valuable assets in the NBA right now.
And Jaylen Brown is indeed valuable, but the Celtics at some point, just like how the Knicks took a stand, stood by Karl-Anthony Towns and letting it be known that the Giannis talks are over. Brad Stevens is going to have to do something similar because the math doesn't quite add up, especially with today's version of Giannis. You got to pay him an additional supermax contract. We're talking about a star that's about to enter his mid-30s with a bunch of lower body surgeries. The optics are still a stretch, so why entertain it and not stand by your player? But it is what it is. There's definitely multiple layers to this whole Jaylen Brown situation. Him being a little bit too boisterous and opinionated. And the NBA right now is at a point where they're trying to be that global league to appeal to the masses. And players taking stands on certain issues is not necessarily going to fit with that image. We can't ignore the marketability of some of these players. And depending on who, some might get a push by the league. In certain circumstances, Jaylen Brown's going to realize that when you do take a stance, it's going to come with a lot of arrows and sacrifice. You're going to lose a lot. We always hear Muhammad Ali's name being tossed out there, but he has lost a lot, especially financially. The shadow banning and low-key blackball out of certain situations like sponsorships, not being on Team USA after winning the NBA Finals MVP. These things are going to happen, and unfortunately, he's going to have to take everything that it comes with. We're in a landscape today where the audience has been conditioned to view the players actually getting to the money way more than their character. And this is why you're not necessarily going to see a Muhammad Ali or even a player like Charles Barkley who used to actually voice his real opinions. That's going to be very far in between.